What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that absolutely dominated the conversation on NBA Today this afternoon that has the entire Lakers universe buzzing with a mixture of excitement and strategic debate about how to best maximize this championship window. I'm talking about the kind of roster construction discussion that forces you to really examine what this team needs right now versus what might look good on paper but doesn't actually make them better. The type of analysis that goes beyond just acquiring big names and focuses on fit, role definition, and how pieces complement each other rather than just individual talent. This isn't just about one potential trade target. This is about organizational philosophy, about whether the Lakers should be chasing the shiniest toys available, or if they'd be better served going after multiple role players who can excel in clearly defined positions. So settle in, because what I'm about to share from today's ESPN broadcast isn't just about Nick Claxton potentially being available. It's about the broader question of how you build a championship roster around three elite offensive engines and whether star chasing is always the right strategy. All right, here's the situation that had the entire NBA Today panel absolutely engaged this afternoon, and I'm talking about veteran NBA analysts who've covered championship teams for decades and understand the nuances of roster construction at the highest level. The main story that emerged wasn't actually framed as Nick Claxton to the Lakers breaking news, but rather as part of a much more sophisticated discussion about how the Lakers' big three of Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves has been performing, and what that means for the types of role players they should target at the trade deadline. When you watched that Clippers game and saw how dominant those three were offensively, how they created easy opportunities for role players, how the offense just flowed when all three were clicking, it fundamentally changes your perspective on what this team actually needs to add. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump into this massive Lakers news, I just want to ask you for a quick favor that would mean the world to me. If you could just take 1 second right now and hit that like button, it would be incredibly important to me and helps this channel grow so much. I know it seems like a small thing, but those likes genuinely make a huge difference in getting this content out to more Lakers fans who need to stay updated on everything happening with this team. So seriously, just tap that like button real quick. It literally takes 1 second, and it helps me out more than you know. Let me start by giving you the full context that NBA Today was establishing right at the beginning of the broadcast, because understanding how the Lakers' offense has evolved with their big three is absolutely essential for evaluating any potential roster additions. The ESPN crew was showing extended highlights from the Clippers game where Luka, LeBron, and Reeves all had their moments to shine, where the offense looked as good as it has all season, where role players were getting wide-open threes and easy finishes because of how much attention the defense had to pay to those three creators. The analysts were making the point that this big three is only going to get better as they build chemistry and familiarity, that what we're seeing now is probably the worst they'll look together, which is a terrifying thought for the rest of the league. But here's what really got the NBA Today analysts fired up about the roster construction implications, and this is where the Nick Claxton possibility comes into play within a broader strategic framework. When you have three elite offensive engines who can all create shots for themselves and others, when you have that much playmaking and scoring ability concentrated in three players, what you don't necessarily need is another high-usage player who requires the ball to be effective. What you need are role players who can do the dirty work, who can defend multiple positions, who can knock down open threes when the defense collapses, who can finish lobs and easy opportunities created by your stars. Claxton represents exactly that type of player, a center who doesn't need plays run for him, but can be devastatingly effective in his role. The show dove deep into what Claxton specifically would bring to the Lakers and why he makes so much sense despite not being a household name or perennial all-star. And here's where you really see the basketball fit becoming obvious. Claxton is one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, averaging over 2 blocks per game and providing exactly the type of defensive anchor the Lakers have been missing. He's incredibly mobile for a center which allows him to switch onto guards on the perimeter and not get exploited, which is crucial in playoff basketball against elite offensive teams. He's a vertical threat in pick-and-roll situations who can catch lobs from Luka and LeBron all day long. And most importantly, he doesn't need a high usage rate or shots designed for him. He can be incredibly effective on 8 to 10 10 shots per game just by doing his job. What the ESPN crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding the Lakers' situation, is that Brooklyn is in full rebuild mode and would presumably be willing to move Claxton for the right package of young players and draft picks. Claxton signed a 4-year, $97 million contract, which makes him valuable as a trade chip. But the Nets aren't trying to compete now, so they'd rather accumulate assets for the future. The NBA Today panel was discussing potential trade packages that might work, suggesting combinations like Rui Hachimura plus draft capital, or multiple rotation players plus picks, trying to find frameworks that would entice Brooklyn without completely gutting the Lakers' depth. The panel spent extensive time analyzing the alternative approach that was also discussed on the show, which is targeting multiple second-tier role players instead of one higher-end acquisition, and this sparked really interesting debates about team-building philosophy. The analysts were discussing how acquiring guys like Matisse Thybulle and Keon Ellis might actually make more sense than going after someone like Andrew Wiggins, even though Wiggins is clearly the better individual player. The reasoning is that with Luka, LeBron, and Reeves handling all the offensive creation, you don't actually need Wiggins' ability to create his own shot and be a secondary scorer. What you need are specialists who can defend, shoot threes, and play their roles to perfection. What I found particularly fascinating during today's NBA Today discussion was when they started breaking down the financial and asset cost differences between various approaches. Going after a player like Andrew Wiggins or Herb Jones would presumably cost the Lakers their 2031 first-round pick, plus maybe additional assets, and you're getting one really good player who might not even be utilized to his full potential given how ball-dominant the Big Three are. Alternatively, the Lakers could keep their first-round pick and use second-rounders and rotation players to acquire two role players like Ellis and Thybulle, giving them multiple defensive-minded wings who can knock down threes. The ESPN panel was debating which approach actually makes the team better versus which one just looks better on a depth chart. The show also explored the Claxton option within this framework, and honestly, this is where things got really interesting strategically. Some analysts argued that Claxton represents the best of both worlds. He's a true difference-maker defensively, who would instantly upgrade the Lakers' biggest weakness, but he's also a role player who doesn't need the ball and won't disrupt the offensive hierarchy. You're getting impact without sacrificing offensive touches or chemistry. Others countered that the Lakers' center position with Anthony Davis and DeAndre Ayton is actually fine, and that their biggest need is on the wing where they lack two-way players who can guard elite scorers, while also spacing the floor offensively. What really struck me during the ESPN analysis was when they started discussing the practical realities of the trade market and how desperation affects prices. The NBA Today crew was making the point that teams like the Warriors, Heat, and others are all going to be chasing the same high-end wing players like Wiggins, Bridges, and Herb Jones if they become available. That bidding war is going to drive up the price to potentially unreasonable levels, where you're giving up way too much just to outbid everyone else. Meanwhile, players like Ellis, Thybulle, Josh Green, and Haywood Highsmith aren't going to generate the same feeding frenzy, which means the Lakers could potentially acquire multiple pieces without getting into bidding wars or overpaying. The panel also spent significant time analyzing what the Lakers' Big Three being this good means for role player evaluation, and this was one of the most insightful parts of the entire segment. When you have three players who can generate 120-plus points of offense, essentially by themselves through their own scoring and creation for others, the pressure on role players changes completely. You're not asking your fourth or fifth starter to go get you 15, 18 points per night. You're asking them to hit the 1 or 2 open threes they get, to make the right defensive rotation, to set good screens, to do all the little things that winning basketball required. The ESPN analysts were suggesting that teams often overpay for offensive talent, when what they really need is defensive specialists and glue guys. One aspect that got really interesting discussion on NBA Today was the contract and timeline considerations around various targets. Claxton is locked in for multiple years, which gives you long-term security, but he's also expensive. Someone like Matisse Thybulle is a free agent after this season, which means you could lose him for nothing. But it also means you're not committed long-term if it doesn't work. The Lakers have to balance immediate championship aspirations with not completely hamstringing themselves financially for years to come, and that calculation affects which players make sense to target. The panel was going through various scenarios showing how different acquisitions would impact the Lakers' cap situation both now and in future seasons. Listen, after watching the entire NBA Today segment this afternoon about the Lakers' roster construction options and how Nick Claxton fits into that broader discussion, I'm absolutely convinced that the Lakers should be targeting multiple role players rather than chasing one high-end name. Claxton makes tremendous sense as a defensive anchor who would instantly upgrade their rim protection without requiring offensive touches. And if Brooklyn is willing to move him for a reasonable package, the Lakers should absolutely explore it. But the broader point about building around 3 elite creators by surrounding them with specialists rather than more shot creators is really compelling. Sometimes the best move isn't the flashiest move. Sometimes getting 2 or 3 really good role players beats getting one borderline all-star who doesn't actually make you that much better because of how the pieces fit together. The Lakers need to be smart and strategic rather than just chasing names, and if that means sneaking through the back door to get value while everyone else fights over the shiny toys, that might be exactly the right approach.